hand, in opposition, we have Team Gap. The motion for this round is this House believes that tax invasion should not have a statute of limitation. Without further ado, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister from the proposition side to set the motion and to present the proposition case. May I begin? Before going on to any of the arguments proposed by the proposition house, we would like to set things clear. We need to look at the spirit of the motion before going on any further into our arguments. We need to know about the status quo that needs to be provided in order for this debate to stand in this era, ladies and gentlemen. Whether it be Korea or the US or any other country that has capitalists or entrepreneurs in it, the problems of corporations and individuals not obliging their responsibility as proper citizens happen, and in this case, those responsibilities include that of tax, ladies and gentlemen. So, we have all heard of the term Virgin Island, ladies and gentlemen. It's a place where immense amounts of money gather, and that money had to be provided for the government for their taxations, ladies and gentlemen. The industries are using it for their own purposes. What about the Swiss banks, ladies and gentlemen? We have seen many cases in which corporations or individuals send off their money to Swiss banks to get both the interest and the secretive money that had to be paid for the government in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. These two cases are basically not obliging to the responsibility that was bestowed upon these citizens and corporations as legal citizens and legal corporations of a state, ladies and gentlemen. So having this status quo in mind, this problematic status quo in mind that we need to solve in this debate, we would like to define the motion before going on any further into the arguments. We define tax evasion as not paying tax even though it's an obligation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is basically different from avoiding tax, in which avoiding tax still has the possibility of the citizens or corporations paying tax, whereas tax evasion is disregarding the obligation that was provided for the government as a legal citizen or a corporation, and plus disregarding the law that was provided by the state, ladies and gentlemen. We also define statute of limitation as enactment in law that sets maximum amount of time of after an event that legal systems are based upon, ladies and gentlemen. So having these two definitions and the current status quo in mind, let us go on to the three main arguments of the proposition house today, which are, first of all, justification why our policy has to be implemented in order for the status quo to get better, and second, the necessity of our policy, why our policy is needed in the first place, and third, about the governmental message that will be sent to the society, which will be elaborated by our second speaker of the proposition house. So, having these three arguments in mind, let us go on to the first argument, which is about the justification of our policy in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that our policy of having limitless amount of time when going upon the tax evasion issues.
On that matter, sir?
No, sir. Both has benefits and message that can be sent to the society, that all citizens or corporations have the responsibility to oblige to the taxation issues of the government in the current society, ladies and gentlemen. We have divided this argument into two levels. First of all, how it's the citizens and the industry's responsibility to pay tax, and second, how government agencies need limitless amount of time when dealing with such criminal acts in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. No, ma'am. Let's go on to the first level of how it's citizens' responsibility and the industry's responsibility to pay the tax to the governments, ladies and gentlemen. Let us go on to the citizens first. Why it's the citizens' responsibility to pay tax? Well, ever since citizens are born in this land, there are certain rights that are bestowed upon them. For instance, right to live, right to pursue happiness, right to speech, right to vote, so on and so forth. Opposing to this, there is also a responsibility that is given upon them as a citizen of this country, ladies and gentlemen. These responsibilities in the state of Korea includes military issues and both tax issues in the first place. So why does responsibility need to be enacted? Well, unless responsibilities are held by the citizens, it damages the whole society, ladies and gentlemen. That's why responsibility needs to be held. So what about the military issues? Unless we go to militaries, there are possible threats that can be happening in Korea. That's why military is a responsibility here in Korea. What about tax, ladies and gentlemen? Unless we pay tax, the government budgets are cut. And when government budgets are cut, the governmental policies that had to be implemented in the first place cannot be implemented for the betterment of the whole of the citizens. That's why tax has to be a responsibility of the citizens. What about the industries, ladies and gentlemen? Why is it the responsibility of the industry to pay tax? Well, there was this famous speech from Barack Obama in the 2012 elections. You didn't build that speech. This means that infrastructures or support that the industries got from the government wasn't something that they conjured up in the first place. It was provided by the government and the citizens, and that's the reason why industry has to pay back to the society in which they have already used up its resources provided by the government and its people, ladies and gentlemen. So having this in mind, let us go on to the second level of the first argument, how government agencies need limitless amount of time when dealing with such issues. Agency of Nevada stated that in order to conjure up one piece of evidence for this tax evasion issue, there needs to be provided 2 months worth of time, ladies and gentlemen. This means that in order to get one stack of paper that proves that this company or this individual has committed a tax evasion, there needs to be 2 months worth of time, ladies and gentlemen. And it is clear that in the current status quo, government agencies need limitless amount of time, ladies and gentlemen, in order to conjure up when they committed such act, where they committed, how they committed, and why they committed such act, ladies and gentlemen. No, ma'am. So having this in mind, we can see that it is pretty clear that in order to to interpret the evidences that are provided for them, this limitless amount of time needs to be acquired in order for the charge to
On that matter, sir.
in this debate. No, sir. Having these two levels of first arguments in mind, let us go on to the second argument of this debate, of the necessity of this policy, why this policy is necessary in the first place. Well, according to the 2011 statistics provided by the Police Agency of Korea, $60 billion are sent off to the other foreign countries for tax evasion issues, ladies and gentlemen. This money, $60 billion, isn't a small amount of money, ladies and gentlemen. It's worth a one big corporation, ladies and gentlemen. With this sort of money, the government could have done many other acts that could have possibly benefited the citizens, ladies and gentlemen. They first of all could have provided those money to the small corporations in which they need more competition level. Second, they could have provided infrastructures in which citizens or the corporations both need. Third, and most importantly, they could have made more governmental policies, ladies and gentlemen. We need to keep in mind that governments are not corporations, ladies and gentlemen. The only way in which they can get money is by taxation, ladies and gentlemen. They don't have stocks, they don't do robbery, they don't...
Not Madison.
No, ma'am, it's out of order. Or do they have other sorts of methods in which they can get money? No, ladies and gentlemen. The only way in which government can get money in a surface level is tax, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the reason why tax is so important in the governmental issues, and that is the reason why the Proposition House has been completely devoted in this debate about how government needs to get tax from the citizens, ladies and gentlemen. So having these two arguments in mind, first of all, justification of how our policy has to stand in this debate, and second of all, necessity of our policy, how it is so needed in the current status quo, our Proposition House is proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. May I now call upon the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, the first Speaker of the negative bench, to present the negative case.
So thank you, Judge. First of all, honorable speakers and my honorable judges and my honorable audience, today we gathered here to have a debate under the motion that this House believes that the tax evasion should not have statute of limitations. And as a leader of opposition side and as the opposition side, I strongly believe that our team stands for the opposite side of this motion. And we strongly believe that the tax evasion should have a statute of limitations because there are reasons for a statute of limitation, ladies and gentlemen. So before going on to my rebuts, I really want to ask the question toward the proposition side. Is tax evasion, ladies and gentlemen, is tax evasion a more cruel deeds than other cruel crimes such as murders, ladies and gentlemen? In Korea, there are 25 years of statute of limitation toward murder and 10 years of statute of limitation on tax evasion. Ladies and gentlemen, what I want to say is that the statute of limitations exists for reasons, ladies and gentlemen. So, as a leader of opposition, I would firstly give rebuttals to what the proposition I've mentioned, especially the Prime Minister's argument, and I would like to further elaborate about our two arguments, which is firstly about the reasons why we need the statutes of limitations on three big points regarding the legal stabilization, efficiency, and other parts. And the second argument is about the power of statute of limitations, ladies and gentlemen. So going on to my rebuttals, the Prime Minister has mentioned about something in his argument that the citizens should have the responsibilities toward the taxes regarding the tax problems, and the industry should have the responsibilities for the tax problems. And yes, we do agree. The opposition side do agree. Every citizen and industry has the responsibilities for paying taxes. But ladies and gentlemen, today's motion is not about debating about whether the paying tax is a duty or the right of the citizens. Today we are talking about rather that the statute of limitation is needed regarding the tax evasion problems, and this will, thank you, sir. And this will be further elaborated in my first reason, which is about the efficiency, and which is about the reasons that the existence of statute of limitations. Also, second of all, the Prime Minister has suggested that the limitless time is needed for the prosecution and the people and the police to actually cover up all the evidence about the tax evasion. And I believe, and this is the exactly reason why we should have statute of limitations, ladies and gentlemen, because the prosecution and the police have the limited resources. So, and that will be also pinpointed on my first point of my first
information, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. First, my first point of my first argument. So, going on to my argument, the first argument and the main argument is that there are reasons why we should have statute of limitations. The reason why we need statute of limitations can be divided into three big groups. First of all, legal stabilization. Second of all, efficiency, and third of all, others. So, first, let's go to a point of efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Prime Minister mentioned, prosecution and the police have very limited resources. They lack both human resources and economic resources compared to the number of crimes done in the country. Also, in order to maintain the system of prosecution and police, lots of resources have to be input into the system. So, if we erase the statute of limitation on any sins, especially the tax evasion, the prosecution and the police must care about things that have already gone. And while their primary concern...
information, sir.
No, thank you, sir. The primary...
Yes, sir.
No, thank you, sir. And their primary concern should be focused on shielding and protecting the current society and current people, ladies and gentlemen. If the statute of limitation on tax evasion is annihilated, who will going to burden for the extra resources the prosecution and the police require, ladies and gentlemen? Normal and innocent citizens in the form of another increase in tax. Yes, sir?
Happened 6 or 10 years ago for tax exemption acts.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Prime Minister is misunderstanding about the statute of limitations, because actually in Korea, even in Korea, there are statute of limitations of more than 10 years, at most to 15 years, ladies and gentlemen. And I believe that this amount of time is very sufficient for the prosecution and the police to move on to the further investigation with more efficiency. What I'm saying is that if we annihilate the system of statute of limitations, the efficiency of the prosecution, efficiency on the investigation, and the speed of the investigation of the prosecution and the police will decrease, ladies and gentlemen. And also, what I have told you, who will going to be the burden of the extra resources the prosecution or the police require? It's normal and innocent citizens. The tax and this burden will drive and will be imposed to normal citizens.
Exactly, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. Secondly, because the prosecution and the police have a much more powerful information information strength, and greater power on human resources than normal citizens. In the perspective of the government versus individual, the Constitution is regarding it's their right for the individual to get a trial in the near future from the point when the crime is done. And because of this, there are possibilities for the government to abuse it. For example, if the prosecution wants certain corporation under their influences, they can threaten the company with the fact that they evaded tax 50 years ago. Is it okay to give much power to the prosecution and to limit the freedom of individual or corporations? We believe it's not. So, third of all, if the time passes too much, there will be a hard time having a fair trial, ladies and gentlemen. Where is trial? Where is trial? Trial should be the source of fairness and objectiveness. Even though the defendants have done the wrong things, no things. In our democratic society, we have to respect their rights to have a fair trial. However, if too much of a time has passed, it is very reasonable the trial may lose its fairness because it is very hard to find legitimate evidence as time passes. So we are not saying, no thanks. We're not saying the tax evasion is a right deed, but the statute of limitation exists for these reasons. Even in the case of murder, which is inhumane deeds than evading tax, it has statute of limitation of 25 years. If the proposition wants one statute of limitation on tax evasion should be ended, they should also come up with arguments why the statute of limitations on other crime deeds cannot be ended, but only tax evasion, ladies and gentlemen. The reason of problems of tax evasion does not rely on the existence of statute of limitation, but on our legal system. Our opposition side strongly believes. We say there are problems about tax evasion in our society because the lightness of punishment. In Korea, where there are extremely many cases of tax evasion, even though people say the tax evasion is very wrong deeds, its penalty is very minuscule compared to the severeness of the crime. Or compared to America, where the punishment can be up to the life in prison. And I believe that this legal system, this weak punishment is in a loophole in a legal system is reason for the tax evasion. And lastly, I want to mention about the power of the statute of limitation. Ladies and gentlemen, recently the Chonduan was enlightened again by the media of the tax because his statute of limitation on his tax evasion on $202 billion one of his evaded tax. For more than 20 years, there was a sustainable suspicion of the fact that his evasion, but the prosecution actually did nothing because of outside pressure, and postponed to later days. However, because soon the statute of limitation ends, finally the government and the media started to have actively participation in investigating them. And this is the power of statute of limitation, ladies and gentlemen. With the existence of statute of limitation, more interest from the society can be endorsed, and the further movement on the way to handle and to punish the tax evaders can be encouraged. If the tax evader can get out of the police dragnet after a certain limitation of time, more concerns and active investigations will be both done by the prosecution and the society. Therefore, the ability of the police force will increase and the society will also get matured. So what have I told you? First of all, because there are reasons for the statute of limitations, and second of all, because the statute of limitations has a great power onto tax evaders, I strongly oppose this motion, and I'm really proud to oppose. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. May I now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to stand on the proposition case.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, we find so many people, so many politicians, and so many corporations actually hiding their income and actually going to Virgin Island or other tax havens for their own personal benefits. And we currently find insufficient status quo, and that is the reason why the government is proposing the motion. So as a Deputy Prime Minister, I would like to do two main things. First of all, I would like to make a refutation against what Leader of Opposition has just said. And then I would like to introduce our third and last argument, which is about a government's will. Well, first of all, making our first refutation against their logic. The first logic was about the reasons for limitation of the statute. And they have said, they divided this into somehow 3 levels, and they said that the legal stabilization, efficiency, and other things are important. And I would like to review the first one first, the legal stabilization. And they have said that we are giving too much power to the prosecution. But again, this is a single liner, and they have not provided any logical evidence why we are handling this, why, if we promote this motion, why we are giving the prosecutor so much power. And also, we say that prosecutors are the ones who can actually deal with this tax evasion problem. Because in the status quo in Korea, the former president, Chun Doo-hwan, is actually being accused of this tax evasion. And the prosecutor, Chae Dong-wook, is the one who actually promoted all this investigation, and it is all solving the problem in the status quo. So we believe that the giving power to the prosecutor
On the
is
matter,
not
sir.
a wrong, no, thank you, sir. It's not a wrong thing because it certainly contributes to the problem-solving mechanism in the current status quo. And about the second level of reputation, they have mentioned efficiency, and the team government believes that the team opposition is misunderstanding the social justice model of social justice and the economic model. When we are talking about economic model, the efficiency, the cost-benefit analysis should be a prior thing that we should think about.
Sure.
But if we are talking about the social justice system, the total legislation system, we should not consider with efficiency as a first thing, because we should promote the social justice first before the efficiency. And they said that because of the limited resources, we should all give up on this tax-related crimes, but this does not make sense at all. Because as our first speaker has proved to you, this tax crime is a very serious crime, heinous crime, and the tax is a basis in the capitalistic society. So just giving up on investigating these tax-related resources just because we have limited amount of resources does not make sense at all. Yes, ma'am.
We are not saying that we should give up the research of tax evasion. We are saying that after spending 6, 10, 15 years of research and still
Yes,
not
ma'am.
succeeding,
And as our first speaker has mentioned before, the size of the corporation that we are talking about is extremely huge. And our first speaker has proved to you that in order to find one single white document out of the whole documents, the prosecutor has to spend 2 months. So in order to prove that the corporation has actually committed this heinous crime, the prosecution and governmental agency needs just more than 6, 10 years, ladies and gentlemen. And the second point
On that matter, sir.
Thank you, sir, is actually about responsibilities. And they have said, they agree to us that the responsibility of the citizens is an important thing, especially responsibility related to tax. And they have said something about the spirit of the motion, and they said that the importance of tax is not a spirit of the motion. But that was just a framing by the Prime Minister. And Prime Minister have emphasized the importance of this criminalizing this tax crimes. No, thank you, sir. And in the status quo, even though this responsibilities as a citizen is so important in the status quo, it is not being enforced. And as the team opposition have agreed upon, the former president Chun Doo-hwan is becoming a current issue, and issues about Virgin Island is becoming a social problem in the status quo, Mr. and Madam Speaker. So even though it is so important and it is a responsibility of a citizen living in a democratic nation, we are not currently solving this problem. And we say that by actually eliminating limitation of statutes, we can solve the problem because these governmental agencies need more time to actually sufficiently prove these tax-related crimes. And my third point of refutation is that they have said something that why are we only focusing on the tax evasion? And again, they're not understanding the status quo because a few months ago, Korean government actually eliminated limitation of the statutes for heinous crimes such as sexual crimes for disabled and children, and also for murder, which means the government considers these 2 crimes as a very significant and heinous crime. And this is the same context. We government strongly believe that the tax-related crimes are a very serious problem in the status quo. No, thank you, sir. And my last point of refutation is about some sort of alternative, and they said that weak punishment is the is the cause of every tax evasion happening in the status quo. And they have found a loophole in current legislation, and that is exactly what we're saying. We found loopholes with the current status quo. We found loopholes with the legislation, and we believe that the limitation of the statute is the one loophole that the current legislation about the punishment of tax-related crimes possess. So we are trying to solve the loopholes as the team opposition have agreed upon our argument. And as a Deputy Prime Minister, I would like to explain my third and last argument, which is about the government's will. We believe that by actually eliminating this limitation of statutes, the government can show their will to eradicate tax-related crimes. And in the status quo, as I mentioned before, the former President John Dwan's tax evasion and Virgin Island, which is a popular tax haven for Koreans, is becoming very problematic. And the eliminating statute of limitation will form the social environment of thinking tax evasion as a heinous crime, just like the case of sexual crimes for disabled or children, ladies and gentlemen. For instance, and strengthening the punishment of corporations certainly gives corporations incentives to actually be more aware of their accounting, be more aware of their management of income, and strongly gives them incentives to actually be responsible and be an honest corporation in Korea, ladies and gentlemen. So by actually eliminating the limitation of statute, we can make corporations, citizens, and all the other social components be aware of these tax-related crimes. And also, we can show government's effort to actually fight against these tax-related crimes. And we believe that eliminating this statute certainly helps and solves the problem with the status quo, because as I said before, the government agency certainly needs more time for investigation, and as I said before, the tax is one of the most important responsibility that the democratic citizens possess in the status quo. So that is why we are proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister. May I now call upon the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, and all of our fellow debaters. Today, we're debating under the motion that this House believes that tax evasion should not have a statute of limitations. And as a deputy leader of opposition of our team, I strongly disagree with today's motion. And before I give our team's last argument why we disagree with today's topic, I would like to make some rebuttals on the government team. First, I would like to rebut what the Prime Minister stated. The Prime Minister's first argument included two analyses, and the first analysis was citizens' responsibility. However, ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister only concentrated on the fact that paying taxes is a responsibility of citizens. However, we are not neglecting the fact that the paying taxes is a responsibility, and we are not saying that we should not punish people who commit tax evasion. What we are arguing here is that not having a statute of limitations is very inefficient in our society to actually solve the cases. And this efficiency problem of not having a statute of limitations in our society was wonderfully argued by our leader of opposition. And now I would like to make the second rebuttal to the government team. And the Deputy Prime Minister and the Prime Minister all kept on saying the 2 months examples, and the 2 months is a long term that can have inefficiency in our society. However, ladies and gentlemen, you should be aware of the fact that period of the statute of limitations is mostly over 5 years. And by these facts, we can possibly, and we will almost solve these problems in the period of the statute and before the deadline of the statute of limitation.
The point, ma'am.
And the last rebuttal that I want to make is that I want government team to be aware of, if we don't have a statute of limitation in the current society, prosecutors will have to review and undergo every detailed cases and more number of cases of tax evasions.
PY, ma'am.
No, sir. And by these facts, the prosecutors' numbers will have to increase, and the more prosecutors will be needed when solving these problems. And these prosecutors will have to solve all of these detailed cases and every detailed cases of tax evasions, and it will never benefit but only damage our society's efficiency and damage our society as a whole. And now I would like to move on to our team's last argument, which is the efficiency increase of the government tax officials when solving the problem of tax evasion. Ladies and gentlemen, with an exact statute limitations in our society, the time is limited for the tax officials to take care of the case of tax evasions, and unfortunately, the meaning of time for investigating a crime approaches to us far more faster than the meaning of the time in our usual life. We have to acknowledge the fact that it takes months and years to investigate and solve a crime. And for example, the examination and research time on tax evasion of LG took 11 months, and the tax evasion investigation of Kang Ho-dong took 5 months. And because of this difference that we feel, tax officials are chased by remarkably fast flow of time, getting pressure to complete the assigned tasks. That means investigating the cases of tax evasions to complete the assigned tasks more fastly. Because the tax officials who deal with tax evasion problems are government officials, it is their inevitable obligation for them to examine the cases and to investigate every cases. And to add one strong case, I want to ask a question to you guys. Are you aware of the fact that tax evasion of Chun Doo-hwan, the former president who committed lots of tax evasion on the past, is being investigated by the government officials nowadays?
On the point, ma'am.
By watching the news about this report, I was very shocked. Tax evasion's case of Chun Doo-hwan didn't appear ever for past few years.
Exactly, ma'am.
However, news nowadays cover the tax evasion of Chun Doo-hwan very much. And do you know why? That's because that there is a statute of limitation existing in Korean society. Actually, the deadline of the limitation
We don't believe so, ma'am.
of the tax evasion case of Chun Doo-hwan is October 2013. And this shows us that the deadline is coming up. And we need to solve these problems before the deadline, ladies and gentlemen. And that was exactly why the news reports and the punishments of Chun Doo-hwan are increasing at current state. Ladies and gentlemen,
Contradiction, ma'am.
having a statute of limitation in one country can highly increase the efficiency of tax evasion investigation, just like the Chun Doo-hwan case. To make it better understood, let me make an example of a similar case. Let's say that you are the employee of one company and you need to submit an important report by the deadline. If you have a deadline like this, you'll try your best to finish your assignment and try your best to achieve this assignment before the deadline. However, now let's think that if there being no special deadlines. When there's no special deadlines on your assignment, you'll most likely to think it's okay to do the work next week after taking a break, and you will mostly think that I can submit it whenever I want to, and I can finish it whenever I want to because there is no
Exactly, ma'am.
special deadline. Then I'm going to start next month. Why not starting it time later? And these, ladies and gentlemen, these situations will bring down your work efficiency immediately. This can harm your company and also harm the society as a whole. Just like this case that I mentioned, if we don't have a statute of limitations in our society, work efficiency will decrease dramatically. This will not end here, ladies and gentlemen. Low work efficiency will lead to longer times to solve the cases of tax evasion. This also leads to social confusion and the long term to actually solve the cases of tax evasions in our real society. To sum up our team's last argument, which is increase of the efficiency of the government tax officials, without any statute of statute of limitations, the efficiency of investigations, investigating the cases, and the efficiency to solve this tax evasion problems will decrease. And these bad impacts and damages that it will do to solving tax evasions will damage our society as a whole and bring social confusion to our society, ladies and gentlemen. And because of these wonderful arguments that our law opposition team had mentioned, this House strongly believes that tax evasion should have a statute of limitations, and I'm really proud to propose in today's debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition. May I now call upon the government whip to summarize the proposition case.
데드라인 있으면 그때까지 그 전날에 몰아서 한다 했지만 it's governmental issue.
Let me begin.
그 자체가 different하다고 말했어요.
Ladies and gentlemen, the previous speaker came up to the podium and gave a nice analogy about how when she does homework, she can't do the homework properly. She can't do the homework properly when she has too much time within her hands, ladies and gentlemen. That was the exact analogy that she brought forth. But I'd like to use that exact analogy to our own benefit, ladies and gentlemen. Let's say that I have only 10 minutes or even, let's say, 1 day to prepare for this debate. That I would rather use Debatepedia and all those debating websites that have all the cases and arguments, ladies and gentlemen. But instead, what I want to do, in order to improve my true debating skills, is to read a lot of newspapers like Economist and New York Times, and that's what I was supposed to do, ladies and gentlemen. But because of the pressure of the time, what I did was to look at Debatepedia and copy all the materials, all the cases, all the arguments exactly. And that's exactly what's going to happen in our judicial system, in our society, when we actually follow the opposition's model, ladies and gentlemen. So with this stance in mind, what I'm going to do in my speech is to first provide a line of rebuttal to the previous argument raised by the previous speaker and summarize the two major areas of contention that I found in this debate. So providing the rebuttals to the previous argument. Now the last argument was rather a repetition of the first argument about the efficiency, how the efficiency of those police workers and those agencies are all of a sudden going to decrease, ladies and gentlemen. But ladies and gentlemen, as the first two speakers of our side have continuously told you, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that social justice should be the #1 priority in this debate, ladies and gentlemen, rather than the efficiency model, ladies and gentlemen. And unlike what the opposition said, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that efficiency will actually, in often cases, actually are going to rise because all those related crimes are going to also be found through extensive and more deep in-depth investigations, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you, sir. And I'm going to elaborate further on my clashes, ladies and gentlemen. So moving on to the first area of contention, justification, and I'm going to explain the second area of contention, ramifications, in a minute. So beginning with the first area of contention, justification. Now, the first thing that the opposition actually told us was about how statutes of limitation is efficient and fair. Let's focus on the word efficient and fair. So let's see whether it's efficient and fair. There are actually 3 responses. Number 1, I would like to state that we're not actually talking about corporations or the economy here. When we talk about corporations, of course, we should be thinking and considering about productivity, how much profits you make. But we're not talking about corporations here. We're talking about court proceedings and social justice here, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe that opposition is being very irresponsible and only putting the value of efficiency on top of all other values that should be cherished in our society, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you, ma'am. And we believe that in order for the court trial to be fair, in order for the court proceedings to be fair as possible, we believe that due process should be sufficiently made, ladies and gentlemen. And ironically, the first speaker or the second speaker, never mind, actually came up to the podium and told us that their side actually promotes the fairness of the trials, but we believe that is not the case. Actually, finishing all the court trials within a short period of time is not going to guarantee fairness, but only going to promote hastiness and a lack of research, a lack of investigation, and a lack of due process, ladies and gentlemen. So moving on to another point, no, thank you, ma'am. Moving on to another point I need to make just as I stated in the introduction, ladies and gentlemen, oftentimes we believe that actually getting rid of statute of limitation actually increases efficiency in some cases, because through more extensive, in-depth research for a long period of time, prosecutors often find other related crimes related to that event, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take, for example, there was a corporation who had actually evaded the tax. But oftentimes, those tax evasion issues are all interconnected. So it's not just one corporation tax evading, and all those corporations are interconnected. So all those corporations know each other very, very well, and they have sufficient information, really, they share sufficient secret information behind the curtains, ladies and gentlemen. So through extensive research for a long time, we can find additional information regarding what other corporations have actually done fraud and tax evading, ladies and gentlemen. Those additional information can only be found by the prosecutors only when we go through such extensive levels of research and investigation. Yes?
And do you believe that the prosecutor have to devote their whole career finding every penny of the evaded tax of the corporations?
Exactly, sir. In order to pursue and in order to realize the social justice, and as the first speaker has told you, we have repeatedly emphasized the importance of tax evasion, and I'm going to also add that in the second class. We believe that this issue should not be just dealt with. I'm replying to your POI, ma'am. We believe that allowing those tax criminals to get away with the situation is against social justice, ladies and gentlemen. So moving on to another point that the opposition has made. The opposition also talked about how their model actually increases the legal stabilization. There are actually two responses. Number one, we believe that oftentimes social justice actually outweighs such values like efficiency, and opposition in today's debate has the burden of proof to prove and a clear justification to prove why we need to only focus on legal stabilization when in fact social justice can be important in other cases. And the second response I would like to make is that we need to give confidence to the court and allow the court to decide whether in some cases social justice is more important and in some cases legal stabilization is more important. Because, for example, unlike the Jeonduan case, Japan-friendly ancestors, there's a land dispute about Japan-friendly ancestors, and the descendants of those Japan-friendly ancestors actually won, unlike what the people believed. Actually, that case is sort of against social justice, but the court actually believed that legal stabilization is more important in that case. So we believe that legal stabilization, whether legal stabilization or efficiency or social justice is more important, is going to be determined by case. But what the opposition is doing is only going to limit the whole law into focusing on legal stabilization. So we believe it is our side who actually allows more flexibility in the courts, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to this last point in the first class, which is about how opposition talked about how our side's first two arguments are not relevant to this motion, which was constantly raised by the first two speakers of the opposition. There are two responses. First of all, we believe that the first two arguments about the importance of tax is definitely relevant to this motion, because we're basically telling because tax is so important, we should not allow those tax criminals to get away with the situation. That was the point we were trying to make. And second of all, the second speaker even came up to the podium and told you that countries like Korea even eliminated statutes of limitations for murders or sexual offenders, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe that this is a clear, strong message that the government is trying to send, that tax evasion is tantamount in importance to murders and sexual assaults. We believe, by emphasizing this importance of tax evasion, we're trying to say that we need to go through a more discreet process because it's so important, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to the last area of contention, ramifications. Now, the first thing I'd like to make is about impact on the court and the judicial system. Under the model of the opposition, the efficiency is going to outweigh and dominate the social justice, and the value of social justice is going to disappear, and the flexibility is going to decrease. And if you also look at the perspective on the impact on society, ladies and gentlemen, they thankfully provide an example of Jeonduan and how it's preposterous to actually have a trial in Jeonduan right now after several years. But that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make, because at that period of time, because of the law regarding statute of limitation, Jeonduan abused his political power by exploiting the law to protect himself and to cover up his misgivings, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe that kind of events that are against social justice should be remedied even after years have passed, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for providing that argument, example that actually acted to our own benefit, ladies and gentlemen. So all in all, ladies and gentlemen, because the opposition side have never proved the exact harms, tangible and direct harms of getting rid of statutes of limitations, and because they have not provided clear linkage of how their case works, we believe we're proud to actually propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Proposition Whip. May I now call upon the last speaker of the constructive round, the Opposition Whip.
Honorable Mr. Speakers and fellow debaters, today we are debating under the motion that this House believes that tax evasion should not have a statute of limitations. And before I begin my speech and start identifying my clashes, I would like to clarify some points that happened during today's debate. During today's debate, ladies and gentlemen, neither side is denying the value of tax, and neither side is denying its necessity to the government, ladies and gentlemen. And also, neither side today, during today's debate, is denying that tax evasion has negative effects on the society, and reducing tax evasions is a good thing. Neither side is denying that. Now, having said that, I would like to mention what today's motion was exactly about. Today's motion, ladies and gentlemen, for the proposition side to propose for the motion, ladies and gentlemen, they must have had practical cases for that they must have proved that it is possible, it is actually practical to live in current and modern societies without statutes of limitations. That our law system and our institutions of research will actually work, and it'll be actually practical for the society to keep maintaining without the system of statute of limitations. And by examining my two clashes of first responsibility and second efficiency, let us see if the proposition side has done just that. Now, I would like to move on to my two clashes that I have found, which was first responsibility and second efficiency. Now, I would like to move on to my first class, which was responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, let us look at the entire first argument of the proposition side. Their first argument was the responsibility to oblige, and they have gone to great endeavors, and they have spent a great amount of time and evidence talking about the responsibilities and freedoms that are in the current modern society, ladies and gentlemen. And we do not see how this is exactly related to today's motion, ladies and gentlemen. Today's motion is not about whether there are freedoms and responsibilities in modern society. Today's motion is about whether we need a statute of limitations or not. And yes, we know that those evidence was suggested to propose the motion. However, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that negative effects of tax evasion and how much money people have evaded taxes, etc., has nothing to do with has to do with tax evasion itself, and it does not go to prove that statute of limitations. Not having statute of limitations is the solution. It does not go to prove that. And since the entire first argument was actually about the responsibilities, about the explanations of what kinds of cases and responsibilities there were, we believe that this first argument itself was not the proving of how not having the statute of limitations is the solution to actually these tax evasion problems, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, we believe that the proposition side today has taken an impractical case on today's motion. And let me move on to my second class, which was efficiency, regarding to the impracticality issue, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate the proposition's effort on research. However, we believe that the proposition side today has taken an extremely naive and impractical approach to the notion, suggesting many things that cannot actually come true, and not exactly listening to our concerns when we have pointed out those assumptions after assumptions, ladies and gentlemen. Our side has strongly argued for the lacking of human and economic resources on research, ladies and gentlemen. And our side has continuously asked who will burden the extra costs and resources needed. And the proposition has rebutted this by saying we cannot just give up research just because there isn't enough resource. Ladies and gentlemen, not to mention that this is a rebuttal that is logically lacking. If they believe this, which is the lacking of resources, this isn't enough reason to this isn't enough reason for the motion, then how are they exactly planning to carry on the research limitlessly, ladies and gentlemen? Do they have a clear, concrete alternative? No, they hadn't. Now, I would like to move on to my second elaboration on my second class of efficiency, which had to do with the issue of impracticality. Ladies and gentlemen, if the police and other institutes of research spend that much time on tax evasion cases, then what will happen to our society? And after the POI made by our side, asking if the proposition believes that the institutes of research and investigation must devote their entire career to every penny that has occurred as a result of tax evasion, they have actually answered this POI by saying, yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is so impractical. This is not something that can realistically come true in today's modern society, ladies and gentlemen. I mean to say, what will happen to other areas of crime and other cases that also require investigation, probably more so than tax evasion cases, ladies and gentlemen. This point made by the proposition side was so impractical and so unbecoming to the time that we live in, ladies and gentlemen, which is a diverse and mobile society where every kind of crime occurs, and we cannot devote our undivided attention to the issue of tax evasion. The workers in the Institute of Investigation cannot devote their entire lives to every penny that occurs as a result of tax evasion, ladies and gentlemen. To win this clash, they must have provided the unique characteristics of tax evasion that make it more important and dangerous than other crimes. However, all I heard was vague similes to sex, rapes, and other crimes without any causal relations or links, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, we believe that we take the second point of practicality as well. And also, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition side today has argued and has emphasized over and over again the importance of being aware of the tax evasion problem, ladies and gentlemen. However, we believe that the existence of statutes of limitations is absolutely necessary for the citizens being aware of the problems of tax evasion. When the statute of limitations is over, ladies and gentlemen, there are actually re-investigations by the police and by the various institutions of research and reanalysis of the case. And after those reanalysis, the press and other companies of newspapers post on the internet and publishes an article about it. And what better way is there to get social attention, ladies and gentlemen? We believe that this demands far more attention than limitlessly researching without re-investigation and without statute of limitations. Now, there is another thing that the proposition has continuously emphasized, the 2 months example. However, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to say that this is a very extreme case. And according to their logic, the police over there must not be getting any work done, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that the proposition side has undermined the ability of police in saying that tax evasion should not have statute of limitations because police work is low. It's rather extreme and lacking links in so many places, ladies and gentlemen. And about the rebuttal of the fairness of trials, as time goes by, ladies and gentlemen, 6, 10, 15 years as our leader of opposition suggested, this is quite enough time to hold a few trials without haste, by the way. We believe that the memories of people involved in trials will get weaker and harder to trace. And we believe that tracking records will be more difficult. And therefore, it will fail in areas of efficiency, ladies and gentlemen. So therefore, we believe that we take the 2 classes of responsibility and efficiency. And the proposition side today is taking a naive and impractical, unrealistic case on today's motion. Therefore, we take this debate home and we are very proud to oppose. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Honorable Opposition Whip. May I now call upon the negative reply speaker from Team Opposition.
So first of all, I really appreciate all my honorable speakers and my honorable judges and my honorable audience for attending today's final debate on the EFL League on today's motion. And however, as a last speaker of the opposition side, I still have some words that I have to make as a reply speaker and as the last speaker toward the proposition side. So let's suppose I was doing a homework as the proposition we have suggested. I was doing homework, but the homework was to solve the unsolvable famous mathematical principles that even famous mathematicians were failed to solve or failed to prove. Should we keep on doing this? Should I keep on doing this homework? Should I keep on devoting my life on proving this? No, ladies and gentlemen. Because I have limited knowledge and limited time, because I'm a busy man, I would rather invest time and resources on rather practical thing that can actually promote my merits in my life, such as exercising to lose my weight or to study subjects that I actually need in my life. So, ladies and gentlemen, today the proposition side is being too naive. Ladies and gentlemen, do we have 100,000 of prosecutors to take down all the single penny of the evaded tax of the corporations or the individuals? Or do we have the millions of police force to look up for every single papers that is related to tax evasion? Ladies and gentlemen, it is not. We have limited sources, and the modern society has limited sources, and the efficiency and the practicality is a very important issue in the modern society. And what they were saying was that the finding evaded tax is more important value than our current safety, ladies and gentlemen. Let's suppose that Samsung, LG, Doosan, and CJ, and many other big corporations actually evaded taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, if we cannot find any proof, if we have failed to find any proof of tax evasion for 100 years, do the prosecutors have to devote their whole life finding every single penny of the evaded tax? If the former prosecutor failed to cover out the effect on tax evasion and the charges on the tax evasion, does new prosecutor keep on devoting his life on finding those charges? Ladies and gentlemen, justice is actually a prior factor to efficiency. And we believe, and we also consider the fact that justice is a very important and qualified factors that is very needed in our current society. However, what you're saying is that what our opposition is opposed to is that annihilating statute of limitation is not a way to realize the true justice, ladies and gentlemen. For example, if the prosecutors and police were finding papers and proof of tax evasion when my family was dying and when my houses were being robbed, can we say this? Is this the true realization of true justice? Ladies and gentlemen, we also accept that there are responsibilities and there are duties for the citizens and the industries to pay taxes. But what I'm saying is that ending statute of limitation is not efficient to realize justice, because as I proved with my arguments, because it lacks practicality. And although the justice is a very important factor, because the efficiency and the practicality is maybe more important factor toward the current situations and toward the people actually living a current life, we believe that annihilating statute of limitation is not a right maneuver. Also, I believe that there were no rebuts on the fact that actually there are nationwide and social interests toward the tax evasion problem if there exists a statute of limitation. First of all, the more need is required, ladies and gentlemen, in this current status quo and in this society, the more need is required to reduce this tendency to evade tax than the concentration toward tracking down who actually evaded taxes. If they just keep on ineffective, if the prosecution and the proposition side and the police forces keep on ineffective investigations towards tax evaders, the corporations and individuals will only find trickier ways to hide their evaded taxes. So we say and we believe that heavier punishment toward tax-related problems and forming a right atmosphere in society toward a tendency to evade tax, we believe that this can be a right maneuver. This can be a right ways to actually realize the true justice, ladies and gentlemen. So because of these arguments, I am really strongly opposing to this motion, and I'm really proud to oppose, and please vote for opposition. Thank you.
Thank you for the opposition reply. May I now finally call the proposition reply.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us say that this place is the Virgin Island. You can hide your income, and if the government tries to take away tax from you, you can secretly hide your money, and after 10 years, you won't get punishment, and you can safely return to your country simply because searching for evidences is inefficient. And that was the team opposition stance in today's debate. And as a government reply, I would like to make 4 main points of refutation. The first point was about inefficiency. And they have said the current actually eliminating the statute of limitation is inefficient. But we say that social justice is more important than efficiency. And two values can actually collide. And if these two values collide, we think that social justice should be the first thing to think about, ladies and gentlemen. Rather than economic damages, this is the true damage that the justice in Korea is suffering, ladies and gentlemen. Just because we are making prosecutors and policemen busier, we should not let these big boys to escape our country and to accumulate a very injustice wealth, ladies and gentlemen. And also, if they're so satisfied with the status quo, if they're so satisfied with the statute of limitation, and if they believe the status quo is so efficient, then why are tax-related crimes are being still found after so many years? And as a team of opposition have agreed upon, these tax-related crimes are found so many years after the actual penetration of the crime, which means that we need a longer time of investigation because it is very difficult to prove that they have actually penetrated this legislation. Also, my second level of refutation is about time. And they have said that 5 years or 10 years is sufficient. And they've contradicted their own logic by mentioning the example of President John, the former President John. They have admitted that because 2013 is the deadline for actually prosecuting President John, that the policemen will work more effectively. But what happens if we cannot collect sufficient evidence before 2013? Then we are just losing that criminal, and that criminal cannot be prosecuted according to the statute of limitation. So we say that the status quo has clear limitations, and that is the goal of government to solve that limitation. And the third point of refutation is actually about efficiency and responsibility. And they're totally misunderstanding our logic. And they have said the responsibility of the citizens is not the scope of today's debate. And we say that they're totally misunderstanding the mechanism of our logic. We say that tax is important and important is responsibility, and therefore, because it is so important, we should consider the social justice rather than efficiency. Let us say that massacre happened and many children, many people were killed as a result of that massacre. In that case, we don't think about efficiency because actually finding that criminal and actually prosecuting the criminal is the most important value. And in this case, as the team opposition has agreed upon, this tax-related issue is very important and it should be punished very heavily, ladies and gentlemen. So they have totally misunderstood our mechanism of logic, Mr. Speaker. And finally, my fourth point of refutation is about the limited resources. And they have continuously mentioned that the resources are very limited. And we agree upon that. The resources are limited, so that is why we should invest less amount of budget on less important crimes, and we should invest more money on very important crimes. And as a team opposition has agreed upon, this tax-related crimes is very important crime. And because paying tax is a responsibility of the democratic nation. So we say that we should invest more budget among these limited resources because as both sides has agreed upon, this tax issue is a very important problem in the status quo. And that is why we are here to propose the motion of tax evasion of supporting the elimination of statute of limitation. Thank you.
Thank you for the proposition reply. I would like to thank everyone for being with us. The results will be announced at the ceremony. Yeah. With that, I would like to end this debate here. Thank you very much.